All right, man, I want to start off just because, you're a celebrity. So what was the last big gig that you did? Which I wasn't sure about because with COVID and stuff, there's not as many, you're not on stage in front of a zillion people. So you've been doing TV stuff. What was the last gig?
Right. Well, first of all, Kevin, it's great to be with you today. Thanks for having me on the podcast.
My honor.
Yeah, so I've played in front of many camera lenses lately.
Yeah.
Not many people, but camera lenses. And yeah, the last thing we did a string of promos, like a promotional blitz for Carrie Underwood's Christmas album, The Gift,
Yeah.
or My Gift, excuse me. And so we did the Today Show, we did the Tonight Show, and we did Seth Meyers and Kelly Clarkson. So
Okay.
that was the last thing that we have done. But yeah, in general speaking, this year has been pretty much a dead year for
Yeah.
us in terms of
That's
touring. So
crazy for what you do. Well, yeah, I had seen, I think the Tonight Show, the Jimmy Fallon one, because
yeah,
some of my older kids came home and they were saying, "Dad, you got to watch this. It's like Mad Lib Theater or something that he does," and they pull that up, and then in it somewhere there's, I don't know if it was an ad or it was an intro, and it's Carrie Underwood, and I'm saying, "Hey, I know this guy," and yeah, so that's so cool. Well, so I saw in your info on your website or something, and I've known for a while that your dad was a musician,
hmm
and I had seen something about you getting your start around 8 years old. But then right before we start here, you say no, it was actually at 3 years old. I mean, that's a part of one of the episodes I just did. Might have been like episode 11 or something, and it was on just the things that shape our motives, good and bad, as you know. So you can grow
right.
up in a household and dad gets drunk and beats the crap out of you, and that shapes your trajectory. So you had a dad who was a musician. So was that it? Professional musician he was?
He wasn't a professional musician. He was actually a chemical engineer,
Oh, wow.
and he also owned a flight school. But he loved playing music. He was a singer songwriter, and was actually making a go of it, as much as one could, being married now with kids
Yeah.
and living 5 hours away from Nashville. But he still would manage to come down and do co-writes with different people. One of those songs, Conway and Loretta picked up and recorded,
Oh, wow.
that is still in the can. But through that, my dad got to know Conway. Conway actually wanted to produce my dad at one point. And so, yeah, I mean, he had a great in with a lot of people here, but just like a lot of people, just never really knocked it out of the park in terms of, the success that what most people
And was
think
that
of.
in Nashville area? Where were you guys?
Um, I grew up in East Tennessee in Kingsport,
Okay, right.
so but it's about 5 hours from Nashville, and so part of being in this business is being here in the business. Part of the fabric of the community here. To do something with this.
So you have a dad who's done that. So did you find yourself early on gravitating towards music? And I know, my gosh, when you're a little kid, it's hard to remember the motive and the perspective we look back on now, but it was just, you were exposed to it. So it's just kind of what dad did. If he had done football, I mean, my dad, as you know, is a car guy. So as a kid,
Yeah.
I was a car guy. It wasn't until I left home that I realized don't really care about cars, but it was fun. It wasn't bad. And I don't know that I did it to please him necessarily. It was just what I was exposed to by practice. So when you look back, was it just as simple as that? It's just, I don't know. It's just what you were exposed to. Or did you find yourself, as a lot of kids do, of, oh, I want to please dad in that
Yeah.
sense.
I don't ever feel like it was a pleasing of him, but I just remember whenever he would have his guitar and perform in front of people, that it it like there was an energy to the room when he would start entertaining. And from a young age, that's I remember that. And I remember getting my first toy guitar. So this wasn't a real guitar; it's just a toy.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
still actually have it. It's more of a cardboard instead of like actual wood.
Yeah.
But I remember getting it, and I remember, well, my dad had a Gibson, an old Gibson, 1963 Gibson Dove that I have now. But he had it, and his guitar had a case to it. So when I got this toy guitar, I didn't have a case. So I said, Dad, you've got a case. I need a case. My guitar's got to have a case. He's like, oh God. It's almost like, you give your kids a toy and they play with the box.
Yeah.
This is kind of one of those
Yeah.
situations. So anyway, he took the box that the guitar came in, just a regular, just shipping box. and he sealed the ends, and then he actually cut it out, made it look like a guitar case, put a rope handle in it, and so that was my case, because I saw that, when he traveled, he carried his guitar in a case, and so that was a big deal to me. So, seeing him perform gave me the bug to do something, because I saw that he was getting attention whenever he had his guitar in front of people, entertaining them. And talking about memories, this is one of the first memories I have of being around is I wanted to go and perform with him at one of these little banquets that he did. I'm talking probably 25 or 30 people. It was in a banquet hall, so it was like in a horseshoe shape.
Yeah.
The tables were and everything, and he was in the middle. And at one point of the show, he said, "Well, I'm going to bring my boy up." So I came up, and of course, I'm 3 years old. I'm just banging on this toy guitar, thinking I'm the stuff.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, I realized that someone throws something at me. I'm like, okay, I'm 3 years old. I don't know what to think. Then someone else, and then someone else. And I look down, and there's dimes and nickels and quarters. They're throwing money at me. And so I would be banging on the guitar, and then I go down, pick up a coin, put it in my pocket, bang on it some more, and pick up another coin. So that was my first paid gig at 3. That was
Really?
about
So
a buck 35 is what I
I
got.
can't believe you even remember it. I don't remember anything at 3 years old, much less something as pivotal as that. You've got, I think I saw you got a brother. Do you have other siblings?
I do. I have one older brother. And I remember we stopped at a convenience store on the way home, and my brother's like, "Hey, can I borrow some money? I want to get some gum." I'm like, no, I earned this money.
Did he go, did he pursue music?
He did. And he's a professional musician as well,
Oh,
for
wow.
a country artist named Joe Nichols, and
Playing guitar?
playing bass. Yeah.
Didn't know that. Interesting. So so it's interesting you use the word attention. So you realize you're getting attention. But even that, I mean, to see your dad, and you said you felt the energy in the room. Man, I get that. And I've seen, I've got enough kids that I can see the variations, and I can see one thing that the kids are exposed to. And oh my gosh, man, one kid he gravitates toward it, gets excited. And the other guy is cowering. The other kid is thinking, man, no,
Right.
no way do I want to be. And I've got two sons right now specifically. And one, I could see that he would get the energy, and the other one would go, man, there's no way on earth I'm ever going to do something like that. So it obviously hit a propensity of yours. I mean, do you see yourself as a kid who you enjoyed? I mean, we know that there's some kids who do enjoy attention, and some who are, going to go off and be by themselves. Were you that kid that authentically just you enjoyed the attention?
I did, but I always wanted the attention through music. I never was really like an outcast of a kid, just causing trouble just to get the attention or do
Okay.
anything along those lines. I found that music was kind of my attention getter. It's kind of like that was my bag of tricks was my music. That was what people would look to me, and give me that attention and that dopamine rush.
Yeah.
And it really came to me whenever I was 8 years old, and I was playing drums. My brother was playing piano. We were backing my dad up, and this would be probably our first real kind of gig,
Yeah.
with real instruments. And played. My dad had this gig in front of 1,500 Rainbow Girls. So Rainbow Girls, it's like a women's, like a young ladies fraternity, like 13 to 18 years old.
Yeah.
I'm 8. My brother was about 11 at the time, and we are the last event of this particular part of the show. And so when we finish, we ended the last note, and the next thing we know, the girls are coming out of the stands, chasing my brother and me into the dressing room. So we're literally running like the Beatles,
Like a mini rock
Hard Day's
star.
Night. And we close the door in the dressing room, and we're both looking at each other like, what was that? Number one. And number two, whatever that was, that's what I want to do.
Awesome.
Like, how can we do more of that?
Yeah.
And that's when we started more of our family band and started really pursuing music and playing. And at the time, we had no idea what we were doing. We were just having fun playing music and just
What
and we knew that when we did play, we did get that attention. So there was a
I wanted
motive.
to ask again, was it just, it's the environment that you were in and it was somewhat natural, or was there a point, or I assume there was at some point, when was it that you realized this is what I want to do?
Yeah, I mean, it was right there at 8. I mean,
Okay.
because both of us, I mean, we're like this. My brother and we were just thinking, this is so cool. And so we just kept on with the family band. My dad was much like your dad. You know, he's like, if we're going to do this, we need to do it with excellence. And if you're going to perform in front of people, you need to be prepared and have everything ready. And so we started doing little conventions around town, and these little gigs that would pay $300, $500 for us to come in and play. And I think one of the moment that you're kind of alluding to with this is probably I was around 9 or 10, and my dad took me to a store, and he said, "All right, Chad, you can pick out whatever bike you want to pick out here in this bicycle shop. You can pick it out." And I'm just like, "What?" Because up to this point, the bikes that we had were just makeshift. We had put together old bikes, and I know that you were into bikes, and so it was all about just making the best bike out of junk of whatever we had to make it work. And so with this, I was actually able to buy my first bicycle. And he said, everything, all this money is money that you have earned from playing your music, from us doing shows.
Yeah.
And I think that was the point that really clicked with me. I'm like, oh, you mean I can make money at doing something that I really, really like? I love music. So that was pretty much, I would say that would be the starting point in terms of,
Was that
everything for
then, I
me.
mean, from that point, I mean, I guess it had been even earlier on, but I mean, was that an identity? I mean, you're in grade school going into high school. Were you the guy that played music? I
Yes.
mean, I was that guy. I'm in the yearbook, and they took pictures of me and told stories about my bike and my cycling and my racing. And I was the bike guy. So was that you? You're the music guy or the guitar guy? What was it?
Yeah, I was the guitar guy, music guy, and I was in band, I was in chorus, I was in the drum line, all of those things. But most people knew me as the guitar guy because, I'd be playing, being snuck into bars or whatever and playing on stage, at different places around Kingsport area. And yeah, and of course, the most musical and the superlatives of the yearbook and all of that. And so, and then of course, having an older brother and then one of the other band members in our band, Matt Mahaffey, who has gone on to play with Pink and Beck, and he was on the Shrek 2 album. And actually, right now, his claim to fame is he did all the music for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles on Nickelodeon.
Wow.
He's done all the music for that. And he's also the guy, the Expedia.com. That was him too. So
That's
it's
awesome.
it's amazing that the three of us, kind of a band of brothers here, that we have stuck together and
Yeah.
pursued music and actually make a living at it.
So how does that take you in? So I know I saw that you double majored in music, business, and marketing at Belmont.
Right.
Why?
Because I knew that that would take me to the next level with my music. One thing, whenever I went to college, first of all, let me back up. Whenever we were getting out of high school, my brother, being a little bit ahead of me, I was watching all of this.
Yeah.
And, my mom is saying, our kids have got to go to college. My dad said, okay. So my dad talked to my brother and me. He said, all right, so your mom, you guys need to go to college. Okay. Well, if you want to do this music thing, you need to go to wherever the music is. Well, there's all kinds of colleges around Nashville. And so why don't you find a college around Nashville that will put you in where the music is actually happening? Because my dad, once again, he knew that if we wanted to pursue music, we couldn't do it 5 hours away in a small town of Kingsport. We had to come to Nashville and be where the music was. College was that vehicle for us to be down here and to actually, be in the thick of it here, and to also get our, education, scratch the mom itch, saying you got to go to college. And so then that's why I went to Belmont. The music business program that I was in actually was a emphasis on product development in terms of being in a studio and making records and making albums. And so I'm actually an audio engineer. It's just wrapped up in a business degree. And I went all year round because I knew that if I didn't go to school, I would have to move back to Kingsport. And the pain of moving back to Kingsport was much more of just the hassle of moving everything as opposed to staying in school all
Yeah.
summer.
Yeah.
And so I did that. And so I graduated in 3.5 years because I was just cranking out the classes. And then I stayed an extra semester and got a marketing degree,
Now, during this
which
time, are you still gigging at all?
gigging all the time.
Okay.
The first half of college, I worked at the Country Music Hall of Fame,
That's right. I
and
saw that.
because I wanted to learn more about the history of music. My dad was really, really good on country music history, and so we were raised in that. But this was filling in all the gaps and learning a little bit more. The second part of my college career, I was working for Reba McEntire
Yeah.
at her Starstruck Entertainment, which is studio management, publishing. She had everything in house, and I was the mailroom clerk. And so I got to know everybody in the building. And even to this day, I still work with people that I worked with as a mailroom clerk, like some of the publicists and different people. I still see them from time to time.
So at this point, you already said country music. So was that kind of by proxy the genre that you were in? Okay.
It
And
was,
then
yeah.
were there any specific artists that you were looking at that point saying that's kind of a path, a flavor I want to emulate?
Yeah, I mean, as a musician, we always have a palette of different sounds and different artists that that we want. You kind of take a little bit from this artist and take a little bit from that artist, and you put it all together into your own sound. So I've always been looking at different sounds, and my primary instrument is guitars, and more specifically slide guitar, so dobro. Well, one of my favorite musicians is Chet Baker, who is a jazz trumpet player. So it's the farthest thing from being a dobro player, but I just love the way musically of how he presents himself.
Well, so that was a question. Are you looking at that point, are you looking at specific musicians, playing instruments? Are you looking at, the lead singer on stage? Are you looking at the bands? I mean, what was that draw? Because I know you had the group Pinmonkey. So,
Yes.
you're out there doing that. And at some point, I assume you chose, give me that. I mean, as we're looking at that, I mean, I had that in my pro cycling career of, directions I thought I wanted to go. And then I ended up, for whatever reasons, going different directions, in that career before I even left it. And so, yeah, what was the pathway there, or the vision, I guess, and how did it morph?
Well, and so with the Pinmonkey part about it, while I was in school, I would take all kinds of opportunities. I would always say yes. And, but everything was always for my music. So, hey, will you do like one of the jobs I had was delivering billboards, but back before, obviously before internet, but I would take the Billboard magazine to the record execs before everyone else got them in the mail. And so it was like a special thing. So I got paid $50 to do it. I did that just so I can get into different record labels and just, they see me, I see them. And so everything I did was, how can this benefit my music? And one thing about, I'll just back up about going to Belmont, so many people would say, "Oh, that's great. You're going to go get a degree, and that's something you can fall back on."
Right, of course.
If your music doesn't work out, and that used to
That's what I
really,
asked. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, that used to get under my skin so much because I'm like, look, I am not going to school to fall back on anything. I'm going to school to augment everything I'm doing in my music. Everything I'm studying is going to help me with my music career.
Okay, I don't want to leave this pathway or this segment of life, but just to jump ahead, as you are now, and you have been for a long time. I mean, we've known, for as long as I've known you. I mean, gosh, the last we talked a lot, you were looking at doing more of the, if I can call it, consulting with other artists and musicians, because yeah, that's the story that you see. That would be the movie depiction. The kid's over here in little town, whatever, he wants to pursue music, so he gets a backpack, hitchhikes into Nashville, and sleeps under a bridge, right?
Right.
Okay, so as you are counseling, guiding, mentoring these other musicians, do you gravitate towards that side to say, hey, instead of the consummate little movie story of sleeping under a bridge, why not, get a job in the industry, go to school in the industry, get educated?
Yes, 100%. And for me, it was never falling back on anything. It's moving forward with everything that I've got. It's tools in my tool belt.
Right.
And so, having a business degree and being a musician, a lot of people are like, well, that's kind of unheard of. And it's like, okay, great. I'll take that. I'll take whatever the norm is. If that's not what everyone's doing, I'll take that. And, because that's just more tools in the tool belt in everything that I'm doing in music. So,
Well, and
yeah.
with that, you said you're an engineer. I mean, you've been doing this for, again, as long as I've known you. That's part of your business, is you're doing Actually, just go ahead and speak to that. Again, I'll come back to this. I'll come back to this,
Sure.
uh, sequential path of your career. But you do a lot of, you're on stage with Carrie Underwood, but that's not the only story that you're doing. You're also at home in your studio with a gigantic amount of equipment, and you're doing pieces. This blew me away when you and I talked at length, I don't know, a few years ago, and
Yeah.
you take somebody wants a clip for their album, they pay you, and you can do it from your house because of all that ability. Kind of give people a picture of what you do there.
Yeah, so it's basically internet recording, and I'm actually after this interview, that's what I'm doing today is knocking out a couple of songs. But people send me tracks from all around the world. So what I mean by tracks is basically someone records a song, and they want some instrument that I play. So dobro, lap steel, pedal steel, guitars, harmonica, saxophone, whatever it is that they need, they can send me just the tracks, and then, like you said, I have my own studio here that I can import their tracks, and then I can record all of my tracks, and then send it back to them, and then we secure payment.
Okay.
And so that's especially this year, that's what I've been primarily doing in terms of music is doing internet recording for different folks.
So I've got a good friend, Scott Stearman, renowned artist. He does,
Yeah,
yeah, Scott, but he does these life size and beyond bronze sculptures. And he was asked by a guy, Jimmy Gibson, who was a part of my free agent academy years ago, just
yeah,
brilliant branding guy. And Jimmy said, just to try to round out Scott's brand, it was his exercise. He says, Scott, how would you do what you do? He was trying to boil down what you do, what he does aside from why sculpt. He said, oh, no, what's the deeper thing? How would you do what you do if you did not have hands? If you did not have fingers? And it, was really profound for Scott to think, gosh, how could I do what I do? What's the essence of
right.
what I do? To that, there's so much of what you could do. Well, same thing. All of a sudden your fingers are gone. You're not playing up on stage with Carrie Underwood, but my gosh, your ability to do music and to connect with people and connect with your art out there, you could do in so many ways. You've rounded that out.
Yeah, and I mean, and that's to me, that's a very purpose driven life for me in terms of being creative and being of service to other people. Um,
Well, so going back then, so you're going to school, you're doing this, and at some point, you launched your own songwriting and performance
mhm.
career in Nashville. And at that point, did you think, okay, I'm going to be, lead singer, or I'm going to have a band that I, front, or I'm spearheading? Was that kind of the direction at that point?
Well, it was actually one of these menial jobs that I was taking. That the guy that I was working with, he works for Alison Krauss,
Okay.
and so he knew a lot of different singer songwriters here in the Nashville area, and he said, hey, he goes, a buddy of mine is playing at the Bluebird, and he needs a dobro player. He said, look, I've never even heard you play, but just give it a everything you're saying, you sound legit, so give him a shout. So I called him, went and played the Bluebird with him, which is a very historic
I was going to say, if people are
songwriter.
hearing this and you don't know the Bluebird, type in Bluebird Cafe, and
Yeah,
I don't even know what to compare it to, but
yeah,
it's a
it's a
story and
very
legend. Yeah.
yeah, it's a very historic place here in Nashville that songwriters go to. A lot of people in the industry go to, but so we started playing there, and then we started doing more writers' nights. Which here in Nashville, a songwriters' night is basically where songwriters just get up and they play their songs, and literally there's well, pre-COVID, there's 50 different songwriter shows every night of the week. You can go anywhere and hear songwriters. And so he and I started doing these little songwriters nights, and then we started adding my brother played bass, and then we eventually got a drummer, and then we started going more for the record deal, which back in those days in the early 2000s, getting the record deal was like the ticket. I mean, once you got that, then you're on your way. And so that was what how we got the deal with RCA is we just kept playing around town and trying to build a buzz. And then we started recording, and my parents, they had a bonus room that we set up as a makeshift recording studio, and we just took it from there.
So tell me, I mean, to think back, and I know it's not always the most clear thing, but to think about what was good and bad, healthy, unhealthy, whatever. What were some of the drives? Was there the joy of the applause, the getting the attention, the affirmation of the applause. Obviously, was it trying to make a buck? Was it trying to, did you have your own level of personal achievement you were trying to fulfill? And it's probably all of those, but when you look back, were there some times when some was stronger than the other?
Yes, for sure, on all of that actually, and but being a band, especially there's only four of us, most of the time, we were a unit and it was a team, and so there's a lot of times we'd go into radio stations, and the program director who's in charge of actually programming the songs that you hear on the radio. Sometimes he or she didn't like us. They're like, yeah, we don't like you. But then we would play for them live, and they're like, okay, we're adding you guys right now. Come. There's this one guy that he was so adamant that he would never add us. We played for him. He said, oh my gosh, took us into the studio. The disc jockey in there was like, well, we got to do weather. He goes, hey, weather can wait. I want to set these guys up, and literally set us up, and we played live for about 20 minutes on his radio station. And
That's awesome.
those kind of victories, I mean, that, obviously we didn't get paid anything for that, but there was something so much more for us to know that we went in and kind of conquered. We went in and flipped somebody that did not like our music, that we got them on our side.
So
And so
take me
there
to
was those kind of victories.
keep going through the fruition then of that band. So was that the primary focal point from the time you left school to signing on with Carrie?
Yeah, well, so from Pinmonkey, in terms of our sales, we only sold about 60,000 or 80,000 units, which for a major label, for an RCA label, that's a failure. So unless you sell 500,000 or more, especially back in those days.
Really?
So
Man,
yeah,
that's a far cry, as you know, from the book industry, man. You don't have
it's
to,
way, yeah, and it's a lot different now because a lot, more people are doing more independent,
yeah.
and it's more digital. This is back more into physical CDs, so there's a lot more costs for them. But so we with Pinmonkey, we got dropped from the label. We actually did another independent album, and at the time, a guy named Mark Bright was our producer. So he comes into the story a little bit later. So Pinmonkey, we just couldn't get played. We couldn't get dates or anything like that. And then that's when Keith Urban called me and said, hey, we're looking for a slide player. You're the guy. And I'm like, well, okay, let's go do this.
How did you know him?
Well, just from doing different festivals. We'd do festivals with multiple artists. And so he had heard of Pinmonkey, and then one of the guys that I wrote a lot of songs with, we did a demo, and one of Keith Urban's drummers actually heard me play, and he goes, we need that guy. And so pretty much just on the recommendation of what he heard me do in the studio, then told Keith. Keith had known about Pinmonkey, so it all kind of came together from that.
Was there a time, Chad, when you decided to specialize in that different genre of style of guitar than just the norm? And did you do it to differentiate yourself, or was it just an authentic interest in that style?
It was an authentic interest, but there was a time whenever I was getting out of Belmont, I was thinking, which is the university I went to, I'm thinking, man, in terms of my guitar, I'm thinking, did I major in a minor instrument here?
Yeah.
I was almost thinking the opposite. I was thinking, is this a drawback that, not every song has a dobro in it or a resophonic guitar? But it actually turned out to be more of a positive because no one else was playing it.
Yeah.
So whenever there was a need for one, I was the guy. But then the other way that I differentiated myself is that I was able to learn other instruments. So I've always been a guitar player, so I could play acoustic guitar. I could play dobro. I could play, with Keith, with more of the banjo and mandolin and different things like that. So that's what I've been known as, even like with Carrie, in terms of like playing harmonica and saxophone. They basically, Carrie makes a joke. She goes, well, whatever we need, we just give it to Chad. He'll just learn it, and so that's kind of been the identity with a lot of stuff that I do.
So during that time, were you full-time music, or were you having to do side jobs to support yourself?
No, I was full-time music. So right out
Really?
of college, after I got my first gig, and then Pinmonkey happened, and then Keith Urban, and then soon after Keith was Kenny Loggins, And then right after Kenny Loggins is when Carrie called, and I've
But
been with
then if
her
you're,
for
as we look at like,
13.
the multiple streams of income,
Right.
where, you, it sounds right away. Like, so you had some money coming in from, here's the band. Then you've
Yes.
got these other performers that are hiring you. Is that what we're going to call studio work?
Well,
Uh,
and most of those were still live.
Still
So like
alive.
Keith
Okay.
Urban was live and Kenny Loggins was live, and of course Carrie is live. And then also doing studio work for other people, for songwriters doing demos or
Yeah.
demonstration recordings, um, with them, and with recording my own stuff. So yeah, so the multiple streams came from that, and then along the way, everyone was asking me, "How did you get a gig with Keith Urban? How did you get a gig with Carrie Underwood
Hmm.
or Kenny
Hmm.
Loggins?" And this is the wisdom of your dad. He said, "Why don't you write a book about all the stuff you've already done?" And so then that's when the book 25 Notes for the Successful Musician came along. And by the way, I copied your dad on everything. 25 notes, 48 days.
Oh,
It's
sweet.
like,
Okay.
and I
Got it.
told
Got
him
it.
that, and he said, "That's great." And, and anyway, but that's one way that I wanted to give back to other people, and for those questions that I kept getting asked,
Did
and like, how do I do it?
so coming from, so here you've got this band and you're going after, you get a initial record deal. When was the point, or was there a point where you found found your place, as you're doing stuff for Keith Urban and Kenny Loggins, and then with Carrie, to say, okay, this feels good. I'm comfortable here. I can rest here. Or this, again, it's just a fit. Did that happen?
Yeah. And honestly, I mean, it really hasn't come until probably I've been with Carrie for about 13 years. I'd say the fit that you're talking about probably has happened in the last 5 years. Just
Okay.
where I just really just comfortable. I am who I am, and this is what I do.
Well, we talked. I don't know when it was that we talked
It was
last.
about 5 years ago.
Was it about 5 years ago? So I remember
Yeah.
I was here at this office and I was walking around outside, and you were kind of looking at that and going, hey, the thing with Carrie, it could end,
Right.
or you could tire of it at some point, and which
Right.
that's still on the table, I assume.
It always is. Yeah, and it's that way with any artist. You never know how long an artist is going to tour.
Yeah. Well, gosh, even the dependence on that, if she gets, I mean, it sounds morbid, hits by a truck, or, whatever, something happens, she can't
Sure.
go. You're all of a sudden out of, I mean, I guess you can put yourself on the market and say, hey, I'm not there. And you could land a shot with another artist out there. Cause
Right.
is she kind of, when she happened, now you talked about, you were doing stuff with Keith Urban, with Kenny Loggins, but when she came along, was it just a consistent enough thing that it took you off the market, if I can say? I mean, your
Yeah,
availability at
somewhat.
least.
Um, yeah, and I mean, I came highly recommended to her from Mark Bright, who is the guy that was our producer with Pinmonkey, and in talking with him, he's just like, if you want to, attach your train to a good choo choo, this is a good one,
Yeah.
because Carrie at the time, I mean, she was still new. She had a couple of hits, Jesus Take the Wheel, and a couple of other things, but it was about to just go to a different level. And for me, there was something exciting about that. And I thought, I want to be involved with something of that, and be part of that team. And so that was one of the big factors for me getting on. And then, once you get in, and then, your band becomes like your second family. And, we're just a band of brothers that we all like to be around. And so, it was kind of a molding, all in
Yeah.
about 6 month period of time there.
Well, so that's interesting. So yeah, again, 5 years ago or so, and we're talking, and you're looking at other options, and thinking about what you should do, what direction. So what happened then that triggered that feeling of, I'm in a good place. I can rest here somewhat.
I think it's just I think part of it maybe is age, and part of it is experience. And those are the two things that most people don't ever want to hear
Yeah,
because they want the fast thing. What's
sure.
the give me the nugget? And to me, it was more of just coming into my own, and just being more secure with that. And I think there's an authenticity to that. And the more authentic that I became, not only with myself but with others, that was also kind of the breathing deep part, where you can really breathe in, and you're just like, all right, here we are. And
Explain that more. So what was that change of feeling like was there a feeling of you weren't authentic, or you just didn't understand yourself enough? that
I
changed?
think it was a little bit of both. I'm a big journal writer, so I'm always diving into this, and I always like doing the deep work on this. And I think a lot of it for me was just, I don't know, it was just being more authentic. And sometimes, in our business, it's really easy to have a facade, and
Yeah.
it's easy to have like a, you know,
A
just
persona.
yeah, a persona, and kind of wearing something, a different mask than what you really are. And I think for me, it was whenever you're able to take the mask off, and then people still like you, and they still want to be around you, and they still hire you, and on all that stuff. Then you're able to say, well, maybe I'm not that bad, at all anyway. And the first, with the mask off, maybe I'm not that bad. And and then I think it was from there. Then because I remember when you and I were talking, I was about to turn 40, and you're like, so what does the 40-year-old and Chad say to himself or whatever? And my whole thing was, I want to dream again like I'm 10 years old.
Hmm.
I don't know if you remember this conversation, but I was like, I want to dream again, because at that point I'd hit all of my goals. I'd
Yeah.
toured the world. I'd played all the Sydney Opera House. I've played, the Grammys. I've played, um, you know, um, Madison Square Gardens, the Ryman, the Opry. I've done all of that stuff, and it's like, how can I dream again, like I'm 10 years old? And I think maybe that was part of the, now that I'm thinking about it, maybe that was more of the authenticity of like,
Hmm.
let's you know let's just be a little more vulnerable in how we act.
Last year, pre-COVID, how many days were you on the road?
Last year was our busy year, which was it was the Cry Pretty tour. So we were gone probably, I don't know, over 100 days, 120 probably.
Yeah. How does that craft your relationships? I mean, it's
And well,
got,
it's yeah, it's tough. The nice thing with Carrie, she has two small boys now. And, in terms of the touring schedule, last year was a little bit different than what it normally was, because she, a lot of times, will take her boys with her everywhere we go. So it's a little more concentrated on, our dates. So we would go out for maybe 3 weeks at a time, then come home, and then go out for another 3 weeks, and then come home. So it wasn't necessarily like, here in Nashville, we call them the weekend warriors, where they leave on a Wednesday night and they're gone Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then they come back, and
yeah.
they do that all year long. Whereas we did more concentrated times, 3 weeks at a time, home for a couple of days, out for 3 weeks.
I
So,
know
but
there's
yeah,
so
it's
much up,
difficult.
there's so much up in the air right now, but at this point, do you expect that, when this ends, which none of us know, you'll go back? I mean, you'll be back with her for, however long you feel like it.
Yeah, I'm just, I'm just kind of going with, palms open,
Yeah.
and with everything that's going on in terms of just the world we're in, I'm powerless over that.
Yeah.
So there's no reason for me to worry and to try to make any grandiose plans, because we all know, plans for 2020 look a lot different now than what they were, back in February. So for me, I'm just taking it as it is, and just palms open. And if it's music, great, and if it's something else, then that's fine too.
Well, and again, on back on the multiple streams of income. So you still got, the other business you're doing, like you talked about. As soon as you're done with this, you're going to be back playing a tune for somebody and sending that off on the 25 notes for the successful musician. Um, you have a lot of energy, towards that, and a lot of, where did that birth? Because obviously you've got this knowledge, you got this experience, you got this wisdom, you've been able to use it for yourself and for your
Mhm.
own gain. Great. And so you go on, when did you come to a point of going, no, I do want to try to impart? Was it a, hey, I've been given X, I want to pass it on? Was it a, kind of that angst for people and seeing them just fail, who've got good things to offer and fail?
Mhm.
What was the impetus for that?
It was a little bit of a combination of those things, and it is painful to see people. There's a lot of more scams kind of folks in Nashville, where they'll take people's money and not do what they say they're going to do, in terms of like recording something for them, or helping them out in their music career. And for me, I wanted to do my part to right some of those wrongs, and to help guide people into not wasting their money, and to, you know, give everyone a good shot at being in the music business.
Well, and I'm curious about the business part of it. So you again went and learned the business of it, but even on the, back when I was cycling, we would I remember when we became cognizant of it, probably in our own maturity and wisdom, and we realized we'd see people, especially younger kids, and go, oh my, that's one of the most talented athletes I have ever seen in my life. And yet realizing that they'll never make it because they can't get their crap together, either
Yeah.
from so I'll ask you on the artist side, do you see the downfall? So I'm sure you've seen that. Here's somebody who's just wicked talented, just, I mean, just obviously shines. And yet you see that, or, have that inkling that they're probably not going to make it because is it side generally on the downfall of they can't get their personal life together, or because they don't understand the business side?
It's we see everything, and it's all the time. This is not just something like, oh, just every blue moon you see. This is like, we have, like the band with Carrie. We have this talk all the time in terms of seeing people and we're like, man, this kid's got so much talent, and he's either lazy or he's, like what you're saying, his personal life is just a mess, and he can't hold down a job. He doesn't show up on time. When he does, he's not dressed right, or he doesn't look the musician part, or and it's like it's all over the map. And it's like, if someone that with that talent could, and they have the drive, they've got to have the drive, because if you don't, it's like pulling something through mud. You just, it just doesn't work. But if they've got the talent and the drive, it's just, I wanted to help steer someone in the right direction. And, this is not like a magical book. This is still, it's about work, and it's about doing the right thing. And it's about, putting yourself in a position of where you can get, quote unquote, found or lucky, however you want to look at that, but being prepared for when that opportunity comes. Because that is, in this business, opportunities can come at any moment. And as whether you're prepared or not makes all the difference in the world.
So you've been a full-time musician for what,
20 years.
25? How
Yeah,
many?
25 including Belmont. Yeah.
25. How has I mean, I know I asked about this a little bit ago, kind of your initial drive, but how has your drive morphed over time? I mean, today, what is that thing? Because you just talked about drive. They've got to have the drive. What's the thing that gets Chad out of bed at this point?
Um, I think a lot of it is, in terms of music, is just making great music. There are those days where, I practice every day, regardless of whether I want to or not. So sometimes it's like, okay, get a guitar. Like where I'm sitting right now, there's 12 guitars sitting right here in front of me. So, there's always guitars around the house that I'm grabbing and playing. And when I listen to something, if I hear like a cool lick, I'm like, ooh, I like that. And I'll go get a guitar and I'll figure that lick out, because the love of the music. And, of course, like what we were talking about earlier, some of my influences, a lot of times these little licks, I'll put them in the back of my mind. So if I can use that somewhere, like I'm recording today. So if there's a lick that I'm like, ooh, that would be great in this song, make it my own and put that lick in there. So I'm always learning something. And I think that's the one thing with music is you never stop learning. You're always learning, and you're always learning from different genres, different, sometimes very different places that most people think, because they're like, you're a country musician, so you must listen to country music all the time. Well, that's not true. I listen to a lot of different styles and genres. And that's what gets me up in the morning is knowing that there's something else for me to learn, and that keeps me going.
What do you think well, I get, you probably know, I mean, to be out there in the music industry, what are you labeled as, defined as? Oh, Chad Jeffers. He's the what?
Usually he's the guy that can play anything
Right.
with strings. And
Okay.
now it's harmonica and saxophone.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know those. That's awesome. So you've also now recently, and I'll ask, is this a result of being off the road? you have, I know you pursued or, followed in your dad's footsteps. And now you said your mom was a realtor and you have
Yeah.
now started a luxury real estate company. What was the reason for that?
Yeah, so like you mentioned there, my dad, growing up, my dad was music, my mom was real estate. So I could have just as easily gone into real estate instead of into music, but music was always just that burning fire in me. And through the years, my mom, she was really successful at real estate, and she always wanted me to get into real estate, and especially to take over her clients whenever she retired. And it never felt right. There was nothing. I know you talk about motives, and there was never a motive other than financial motives for me in terms of real estate.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't there. And there was something that there was something that flipped sometime in late 2019. I don't know. There was just something where I started thinking about it more, and I thought this would be something really cool. And then whenever the COVID hit, the lockdown hit, all of us, the live music, everything went away. And I remember sitting here in my house and I was thinking, okay, we're at lockdown. Who knows when this is going to end? So once again, being a journal writer, I wrote from my future self from 3 months ahead. So I wrote to myself, all right, so in the last 3 months, we've been in lockdown. I don't know when it's going to, and what have I done in these 3 months? I didn't want to be the guy saying, okay, well, I watched Jerry Springer reruns eating bonbons all day.
Right. Right.
I wanted to have something, a skill set. So I started recording. I, worked on my studio, like technically, doing everything. And then also I got my real estate license. And with the real estate license, it's 60 hours of work, and it's all timed. So you can't like just fast forward through everything. And so I studied up, and once everything was out of lockdown, I was able to go take my tests, pass on the first time, and then um, I got with a group called Compass Real Estate here in Nashville. It's a California-based company, but the broker here, I've known him for years and years, and they have a sports and entertainment division. So he works in luxury real estate with sports and artists and songwriters and everything like that. And for me, that was a perfect fit. So my passion of music and being around entertainers
I was
and
gonna
sports
say.
figures all the time, it was a great fit. And so it was really good. Today, actually, before this interview, I had a closing. So, things are off to a bang, and I'm loving it. What's interesting is I'm still in the creative and service business in terms, because whenever actually today at the closing, they asked me, they're like, so music and real estate. And I said, what's amazing is, as my two clients and then the closing broker or the closing attorney. So we were sitting there. I said, the feeling I get right now, this dopamine rush of helping someone, is the same feeling I get when I'm on stage.
Yeah.
And I know they're two completely different things, but to me, the feeling is still the same. And so then that's when I know that I'm doing the right thing in terms of being in real estate.
That's excellent. So that's you intend that to be a long-term thing. So if this were to magically all go away, you go back on tour with Carrie, this is just another stream of income for you.
Yes. And
Yeah.
what's great is the broker, we're team partners. So we formed the Encore Home Group, and once again we cater to sports and entertainment people. So if I'm out of town, he's got my back, and same thing with him. If he's out of town, I've got his back.
I want to end on just the helping other artists out there. 25 notes for the successful musician. Obviously, just like in luxury real estate, the celebrities, how to talk that talk and walk that walk and what their interests are and whatnot. And these principles for musicians. Now, I'm sure you could take that and extrapolate that and help anybody with business to some degree. But
Yes.
the musician aspect, if we even put that in I always hesitate to use the word art. We all know that an artist, you think of the visual arts and the audio arts and whatnot. Now I
Right.
think I'm an artist, but it's a different genre. We all have our art. I like that. Thanks for Seth Godin for saying that. We've all got our art, but over here, it is a different animal, man. When you're doing music, when you're doing, painting, when you're doing sculpting, it's such a thing where I think so many people, back to what we were talking about a minute ago, they don't know how to get it out. They don't know how to actually deliver it. And then what use is it if they can't bless somebody, with that? Who is your avatar? Well, first off, if people are hearing that right now who are in that, where do you want them to contact you?
You can go to chadjeffers.com.
Okay.
And of course, on all socials, Chad Jeffers.
Yeah.
And then also, I have a course called Backstage Notes, and that's at backstagenotes.com. And that is for someone who is interested in moving to Nashville and pursuing music. Or what's been interesting, Kevin, like whenever you put a product out, sometimes you get not necessarily what your avatar is, and you're like, I didn't see this one coming.
Yeah.
And so what I've found is that a lot of hobbyists who, very professional people, but they play guitar or play drums or whatever in a band, and they want to just learn more about music and how it all works. And so I've gotten a lot of professional people who have actually been getting the course. So it's been really fun to see that. And so it's backstagenotes.com. And what I did with that, I interviewed some of the top-notch people here, hit songwriters, Grammy Award-winning artists, and asked them very, very tactical questions, and not just very theoretical, easy for me to say, kind of questions, but it's very tactical and things that really have helped them move the needle in their career.
You know what? I want to ask, this deviates a little bit from my normal trajectory, but on this aspect of drive and motive, and when we're looking at this genre of art, okay, where do you see people most derailed with errant, unhealthy drives and motives?
In music with motives, it's chasing the money. People, they're like, hey, I want to make, and what happens with that when they're chasing the money is they start trying to put a dollar figure on everything that they're doing. I'll do this. Will this make me anything? And a lot of times talking about art or getting, I'm going to say more of it's like your art product in terms of like a song, because it is art, but it's also a product. And like any other good entrepreneur, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
All right. So like, in terms of getting art out, it is a product, and it is something that, you can't fall in love too much with your product, because then you're reacting emotionally to something that may get you in trouble in terms of putting too much money into it.
Yeah.
But I would think in terms of a lot of artists, it's chasing the dollar and not making more of a wise decision in terms of the career. Making it work.
And it's great to see your fruition, to hear about it. Yeah, there's so much that I didn't know, and I love to hear how it transpired, how it grew. Cool to see what you're doing now and that you're flourishing so well. And it's still fun to see that. Yeah, you'll be out there on the road. I dig seeing anytime I see the Carrie Underwood come up on the TV. I know that guy over there. It's really cool, man. It's inspiring to hear. I appreciate you taking the time and coming on here and just sharing the personal side of Chad Jeffers. It's an honor.
Well, thank you. It's an honor to be on your program, and I really appreciate it.
Thanks,
and
brother.
thanks for all your help.
Absolutely.